The Muslim community celebrates the feast of Ramadan with limited numbers of faithful in mosques and the majority of prayers said in homes due to COVID-19. Supplications for peace and deliverance took center stage. Working towards barring the way to the novel coronavirus in Cameroon, the head of state special gift is dished out to communities as associations join the anti-COVID-19 caravan in the suburbs. Thanks for joining us. Those are the headlines of the 7:30 news. Baraka da Salam. We begin our half-hour newscast with the feast of Ramadan celebrated by Muslim faithful today who rendered grace to Allah for seeing them through the month-long fasting, prayer and reflection. At the Yaoundé Central Mosque, only 50 persons were allowed into the prayer ground as emphasis was put on barrier measures to restrain the coronavirus. The chief celebrant, Imam Muhammadu Saminu, centered his message on peace and Allah's mercy to end the pandemic. Yoti Kalelisonge has the details.
A Ramadan feast like no other, and the faithful are reminded right from the gate of the health crisis. All must comply to get access to the mosque. Allah is great for seeing them through the month-long fasting period. They are grateful. And the Imam of the Yaoundé Central Mosque, Sheikh Mohamed Saminu, is clear on the attitude that should prevail.
He asks us to live in solidarity, in peace, in harmony. And about this pandemic, he has called and asked to every one of us to observe the hygiene sanitation recommendations of the government.
The celebration of Eid Mubarak has also been restricted.
It is special for this feast, for this year, not to render visit to people. Everybody, every family must stay in one place to celebrate together in family.
It may not be the type of feast there.
We're sorry for bridging that report. The As-Salam Mosque in Komkana was one of the few mosques where Muslim faithful were authorized access today on the occasion of the Feast of Ramadan. Those who turned out for the prayer had to wear face masks and observe the sanitary measures before taking part in the Eid prayer. Beatrice Ngum reports that they prayed for Allah's blessing and compassion upon Cameroon.
As-Salam stands for peace and is the name of this mosque at the Komkana neighborhood, and since Cameroon needs peace in the face of the socio-political and health crisis affecting the nation, Ramadan prayer at the As-Salam Mosque was more of an exhortation for Allah to bless the country with peace and rescue it as well from the menace of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The country is facing several crises: the global pandemic, the crisis in the northwest and southwest. In the east, Boko Haram on the north. So the Imam prayed, since the mosque stands for peace, that Allah should send the pandemic out of this country, heal the sick, and protect the healthy. He also prayed for Muslim brothers killed by the pandemic, particularly for our Imam, Mefire, who died yesterday.
The prayer ground hosted fewer people than the usual due to the COVID-19 crisis, with some basic hygiene rules respected. At the As-Salam Mosque, prayers too were elevated to Allah for the repose of the soul of their spiritual guide, Al-Hajj Mefire Ali Sin, Imam of the Central Mosque No. 2 in Yaoundé, who has slept in the Lord.
And as we announced at the beginning of this newscast, the Yaoundé Central Mosque had less than 50 persons celebrating the feast of the Ramadan today. Yoti Kalelisonge tells us more.
A Ramadan feast like no other, and the faithful are reminded right from the gate of the health crisis. All must comply to get access to the mosque. Allah is great for seeing them through the month-long fasting period. They are grateful. And the Imam of the Yaoundé Central Mosque, Sheikh Mohamed Saminu, is clear on the attitude that should prevail.
He asks us to live in solidarity, in peace, in harmony. And about this pandemic, he has called and asked to every one of us to observe the hygiene sanitation recommendations of the government.
The celebration of Eid Mubarak has also been restricted.
It is special for this feast, for this year, not to render visit to people. Everybody, every family must stay in one place to celebrate together in family.
It may not be the type of feast they are accustomed to, but their moods aren't dampened. It's still Ramadan.
At the Yaoundé 5 Council area, the Muslim faithful converged to raise prayers for peace and progress in the country. The Imam of the Essos Central Mosque, El Hajj Modibo Ibrahima Halidu, stressed on the need for all and sundry to abide by the rules that would oust the coronavirus from Cameroon. Joyce Tata was there now reports.
Muslim faithful gathered at the Essos Central Mosque prayer ground this day of Ramadan with a common message, praying for peace in Cameroon and imploring Allah's mercy on the country during this period threatened by many ills, amongst them the COVID-19 pandemic.
The message of the prayer was pray all together. God should accept our prayer. God should bring liberty in this country.
The Imam called on all Muslim faithful to engage in activities that strengthen government efforts to contain the pandemic.
I'm advising my people, keep on praying, and people should not just stay together like how people are staying in those days.
The youth were also advised to be law-abiding in line with barrier measures against COVID-19, even while celebrating.
Coronavirus pandemic has to a large extent influenced the observance of the month of Ramadan. The restrictions that characterize the period of abnegation for 30 days has also affected the feast today. Although the faithful regret the absence of pomp, they are consoled by the doctrine of Islam. Cynthia Saptala has the details.
This is what 2020's Eid Mubarak looks like in the nation's capital. A single Muslim in front of one of the most prominent mosques in town performing the Eid prayer, which is usually done in congregation. On a day like this one would have seen many mosques and selected open areas crowded with Muslims praying. But this Sunday, the esplanade of the AMIDST Stadium and that of the multipurpose sports complex were empty for the first time during the Ramadan feast because of the coronavirus pandemic. One of the imams we met on site acknowledged that though it was a difficult moment because of the restrictions, he encouraged Muslims to pray at home with family. But it's not just community prayers that have been affected by the health crisis, but also the Zakat el-Fi, which is the obligatory act of charity paid to the poor and needy before prayers.
There are just a few out there that were able to receive the special offering. It's really a different sort of feast because of the health crisis.
In spite of these changes, the Muslim community is glad to fulfill this spiritual obligation this Ramadan.
You just heard the majority of Muslims today prayed in their homes according to the recommendations of their spiritual leaders. Family heads quickly adapted to the new dispensation and led their family members in prayer and supplication. But just how did the prayers go? Alison Bay went finding out and now reports.
At the Abakashi family at Fijurol, prayers began at exactly 8 a.m. They prayed thanking Allah for protecting them throughout this period of Ramadan. They have also called on Allah to save the world from the COVID-19 pandemic.
I will give thanks to Allah who gave us the opportunity and this blessed month in a good condition. We also ask him to approve our fasting and our dua so that the pandemic will be definitively eradicated.
I've prayed with the family very well and it was good. And we passed our Ramadan with the coronavirus, but inshallah we will pass all of it.
Meanwhile, the Mado's family went for prayers at the mosque and upon return decided to celebrate as a family.
We woke up at 7 a.m. We bathed. We went to the mosque. When we came back, we assisted some preparative of the Ramadan feast. After we have eaten.
At the Hassan family in Omispor, the case is not different.
Nous avons prié à la maison, certes.
We have prayed at home as a family. We have also asked Allah for peace, health, and prosperity in the country.
While respecting government's measures to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, the Muslims prayed for Allah's intervention to keep the disease.
most residences in Yaoundé, the celebration was quite timid as families barely received visitors, unlike in previous years where the feasting was grandiose and the faithful filled celebration grounds and entertainment spots. Confinement was the order of the day. Ewane Epole tells us more.
Muslims in the nation's capital Yaoundé celebrate the feast of Ramadan in respect of barrier measures to limit the spread of the coronavirus.
I got my mask, washing my hands all the time. Everybody have water inside in soap.
There is, however, enough food and drinks shared among the Muslims and visitors celebrating with them.
The Ramadan, we cooking, we eating together, we put the nice clothes. Food is meat, potatoes, bread, and everything for eating.
Yes, for the Ramadan together. Everybody is together.
Merrymaking in homes, which usually characterize the feast, is absent this year, as the event comes at a time when the nation at large and the Muslim community in particular is facing hard times because of the adverse effects of the coronavirus.
Celebrations in the regions, the followers of Allah in the Adamawa region also had to celebrate the feast of Ramadan they are unaccustomed to, as Eid prayers were held away from Mass. Due to the coronavirus spread, they were forced to celebrate without the usual communion with friends and relatives. The different spiritual leaders who led the faithful reminded them to join in the fight against COVID-19. Silas Nkwine has the details.
It's been life-changing and an emotional time this year for Muslims across the Adamawa region as they faced a different kind of Ramadan amidst coronavirus restrictions.
It's really painful. Human beings used to be together to share views, sorrows, happiness.
All prayers were confined and thousands normally stayed at home.
We have 4 days of festivity. So many varieties of festivity in our town, but we miss it a lot.
The Imam prayed to Allah to end it.
With basic rules and social distancing observed during different prayer sessions, Adamawa Muslims were called to continue to pray and supplicate for Allah to put an end to the virus.
The state is doing everything possible to curb this disease. We have to keep on respecting the measures prescribed by the government.
The festivities this year were more subdued than usual, as many Muslims in the Adamawa, a region with a Muslim majority, had to balance the needs to worship with the stay-at-home orders imposed by the authorities because of the pandemic. Despite that, they found a way to celebrate Ramadan.
Muslim faithful in Gumo in Mefu and Akono division of the Center region have also prayed for peace and an end to the COVID-19 pandemic. This was during a special prayer at the town council esplanade to mark this year's feast of Ramadan under the watchful eyes of the senior divisional officer for Mefu and Akono, Justine Antoinette Zongo. Details in this report.
It was at the Ngumu Council Esplanade that Muslim faithfuls of the locality turned out for prayers marking the end of the Ramadan period. They prayed for peace and an end to the coronavirus in Cameroon while thanking the head of state for his effort in the fight against the pandemic. While coordinating the ceremony, Imam Abdullahi Atangana challenged the faithfuls to continue praying for peace while shunning any act to destabilize the nation. A call which faithfuls say they are willing to heed to.
According to the message of the Imam, he has given us a serious distance to be taken against terrorism. We should be one. We should not be against the government. We should do everything possible to be closer to the government by telling us that being against the government is against the law of Islam. We have already been sensitizing people. The washing of hands, the wearing of face mask and distances. So as you can see today at the prayer ground, where we did everything by marking the prayer ground so that the distances should be taken.
Presiding at the ceremony, the senior divisional officer of Mefu and Akono, Justine Antoinette Zongo, called on the Muslims to continue respecting the barrier measures in order to curb the COVID-19 pandemic in the division.
The East region was observed in restrictions. The Muslim faithful are glad that the period of fasting was completed. They acknowledged the necessity of confinements and hygiene and sanitation measures, also recommended by Islam in times of pandemics. Tala LT reports on the celebrations in Betwa.
This is the town of Betwa on the day of the Ramadan feast. Unlike the previous years when Muslim faithful crowded prayer grounds, mosques and the streets to celebrate the Ramadan feast, the leader of the Muslim community in the East region, El Haj Arabo, and his team opted for a rather restrained celebration this year due to the prevailing health situation. The prevailing situation has imposed this on us with the COVID-19 pandemic claiming lives across the world. We have decided to respect the government measures and we took this decision with a heavy heart. This day being one of prayers and thanksgiving, the Muslim faithful who prayed at home called on Allah to intervene in the current health crisis rocking the world.
We are asking the Almighty to remove out all the pandemic in all over the world. This is the first. And secondly, as a citizen of Cameroon, we need that the Almighty should accompany us to have a peace, to guide our leaders, to lead the country so that we can be at ease and in a peace.
Sharing being part of the Muslims' way of life, especially on this day, some families opened their gates to a few visitors who had to wash their hands before getting access to the compounds.
The festival of the breaking of fasting in the Far North region was celebrated exclusively in homes with Muslim faithful prohibited from access in mosques. At the Lamido of Marwa, the Lamido, His Majesty El Haj Bakari Buba prayed with his kinsmen at the inner court of his palace and enjoined them to respect the barrier measures prescribed. Similar prayers were conducted by family heads such as Governor Mijiawa Bakari. Ayok John Ashu tells us more from the Far North.
Void of the usual protocol and fanfare, the traditional ruler of Marwa, El Haj Bakari Buba, prayed alongside a scanty number of his kinsmen at the inner court of his royal palace. The preacher of the day, Modibo Emma Yakuba, admonished his brethren to remain steadfast in prayer and acts of charity so as to fully reap from the blessed month of Ramadan. Meanwhile, Lamido Bakari Buba raised his voice in supplication to Allah for an end to the coronavirus, peace in Cameroon, clairvoyance and long life to President Paul Biya. Respecting the annulment of Ramadan prayers in mosque, most inhabitants of Marwa prayed at home with their families.
What is being done now is authorized in Islam. It is admitted. In times of crisis, people should stay at home. And the Prophet advised us even not to visit, but not to move for useless purposes.
In like manner, the Far North governor performed similar rituals at his residence, while congratulating the Muslim community on their discipline with regards to the respect of barrier measures against COVID-19. Governor Mijawa Bakari cautioned that such vigilance should be permanent.
All mosques are closed, and the COVID is here in Marwa. Everyone have to wash his hands, to wear his mask, and to also observe the social distance. And every Marwa city dweller is in the same framework.
Unlike in the past, Marwa is far from wearing a festive look on Ramadan Day.
We'll now take you to the littoral region at the Kambeto Mosque in Douala, where the Muslims gathered to end the 30-day fast in prayer. They were enjoined to continue in supplication and acts of solidarity. In the course of the prayers led by Imam Fopit Mulu Amidu, he underscored the need for Allah's sustenance and protection during the coronavirus scare. Mercy Ashu Nyabeyo reports that all hygiene and physical distancing measures were observed.
It was a day like no other for the Muslim community who came out in their numbers at the Kambeto prayer grounds in Douala to break the 30-day prayer and fasting that marks the Ramadan.
What we should do is to repent ourselves, to return to God, and we are able to pass this examination by conserving our faith, by doing what? By following all the measures of government, that is washing regularly hands, wearing masks,
a prayer that demands intense spiritual concentration, worship to Allah, and thanksgiving for Allah's provision, sustenance, and protection amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why social distancing, the washing of hands, and the wearing of masks is obligatory for every Muslim present to ensure that the measures are strictly observed, was the police and other Muslim officials to ensure order.
And we'll now talk about COVID-19. The number of infected persons continue to rise in the country in spite of the recoveries that have been recorded. This has been partly attributed to the fear component and panic which comes with the suspicion that one might be COVID-19 positive. But in reality, the disease is not a fatality. Beatrice Losamba at the Public Health Emergency Operations Center talks of the phenomenon and the recent figures recorded today. Hi, Beatrice.
Hi, Esther. Well, the worst we have on with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic is that 6 people died from coronavirus in Cameroon today, and we have about 43 people who have recovered from the disease. But the rapid response team has also briefed us about the new cases. They say 293 people have tested positive of coronavirus today. And as you can see, the coronavirus figures keep increasing. They keep growing by the day. From yesterday, we had about 193 cases yesterday, 197 rather, and today we're having 293. Coronavirus is obviously spreading a lot of panic, and people are faced with this scary unknown and are asking a lot of questions, so many questions running through their minds. They are saying, will this crisis ever come to an end? When are we going to reach the peak of the crisis? And for how long again are we going to make sacrifices? Today is Ramadan Day. We can't even go out and pray. We can't celebrate the end of our holy journey with our friends and with our family, just like we used to do in past years. And this is really, a lot is going through people's minds now. But experts say this is not time to panic. We should just be brave and take actions because we have the power to stop this virus. They say that we should keep practicing distancing measures, stay home as much as possible, keep our children back home, and keep our elderly neighbors, friends, and family members who are the most vulnerable population home. They say we also have to make sure that we stay at least 6 feet apart when we're out of home and wear a mask when we're in public places. And we have to continue to practice sound hygiene, they say, but we have to be extremely patient because the numbers might keep rising, that the confirmed cases, the hospitalizations will keep growing. And, in a couple of weeks, there might still be surge. But we need to just keep practicing all these that we've cited in order to stem the tide. Our individual sacrifices, they say, can make a difference. And so we have to unite and take action because we can make a difference. Esther, back to you.
Thank you very much, Beatrice Losamba. 293 new infections. The figures are quite alarming. We had to take you to the Public Health Operations Center because it was 7:50. Now we continue with the feast of the Ramadan celebrations, and we take you to the North region, which was void of the usual frenzy and fanfare as the followers of Allah stayed at their homes to fulfill the spiritual obligation. Apart from exhorting the faithful to consider stamping out COVID-19 as a collective battle, the Lamido of Garwa, Alim Gaga Hayat, who implored Allah to bless Cameroon with peace. Wilson Mengole tells us more.
The usual ritual in mosque to mark the end of the month-long Ramadan fast was absent in the North Regional capital, Garwa. Following instructions from the Lamido of Garwa, Alim Gaga Hayatu, and in line with anti-COVID-19 measures, prayers were said at home.
The last message from President Forbia is very essential. I take this message to implement in population in Garwa to take all measures to protect the population.
A change in habit which Muslim faithful say they are obliged to observe due to the coronavirus.
This is particular this year. We have to pray in our house. We have to stay in house. It's not necessary for us to visit each other.
Good feast to all Muslims in the Cameroon and in the world. We have prayed in
our house like everybody.
The prayer of Muslim faithful in the region is for next year's feast to be characterized by joint prayers and full merrymaking.
In the northwest region, where pockets of resistance from separatist groups still exist, the Eid prayers were mostly focused on the return to peace and normalcy. At the Bamenda Central Mosque, Imam Tuku Mohammed urged the faithful that prayers without the respect of hygiene rules and physical distancing will not end the coronavirus in Cameroon. Mabel Menkemdi reports.
The feast of Ramadan like never before. This religious edifice at the Muslim-dominated neighborhood Old Town Bamenda is said to have a capacity of over 2,000 Muslim faithful, but less than 100 are approved for the upper and lower sections of the central mosque this Ramadan. Entry is strictly on the obligatory wearing of face mask and hands disinfection, but outside the mosque, physical distancing and wearing of face mask are near inexistent.
The crowd are so much. We try our best. We did not accept more than 50 people in the mosque as the governments give the order. Due to the economic crisis in the northwest region, we don't have much to give people.
A limited number of Muslim faithful pray and celebrate in this residence of an elite of Fumban, resident in Bamenda.
For a day like this, everybody is to, as much as possible, to limit the gathering. Gathering of more than 50 is prohibited. This is why I've asked my community not to go and form any crowd elsewhere to pray at home.
The Imam of the Bamenda Central Mosque, Tuku Mohammed, says the fight against COVID-19 goes beyond the feast of Ramadan.
Far from the northwest region, Muslim faithful in Bafoussam, who in most cases had special prayer sessions in their homes with close family relations to mark the feast of Ramadan, have prayed that Allah protects Cameroon and the world at large from the COVID-19 pandemic. Details with Kelvin Nembo from our West Regional Bureau in Bafoussam.
It is the first time for most Muslim faithful in Bafoussam to celebrate the Ramadan feast amidst a pandemic. Despite the trying moment brought about by the coronavirus, their faith in Allah remains constant. In the early hours of the morning in the Western Regional Capital City, characterized by heavy downpour, some selected Muslim dignitaries braved the odds to participate in a special prayer session at the Bafoussam Central Mosque in strict respect of all barrier measures. And at a time when collective efforts are being taken to confront, contain and combat the COVID-19, Muslim faithful were called upon to join the fight to arrest the coronavirus. Given that most of the faithful this year could not take part in prayer sessions as it is usually the case, they prayed at home with their family members and close relatives, followed by merrymaking. Their prayer is that the coronavirus become history.
Still in the West region, we'll make a stop in Fumban, where the courtyard of the King of Bamuns was transformed into a prayer ground for the Feast of Ramadan. Sultan Ibrahim Bumbunjoya used the gathering to exhort those in attendance to remain steadfast in the faith and to believe in Allah's timely intervention in moments of crisis. The prayer sessions, also held in family homes, ended in quiet celebrations, as we hear this report by Amy Banda.
It is an image of Islam's holiest site in Fumban as you will never have seen before. The Fumban Central Mosque, not far from the Royal Palace, adjacent to the Central Market, would ordinarily be thronged with people on the last day of Ramadan. But with the division on the strict coronavirus lockdown, the site is empty. At the palace, the royal family marked the end of the month-long religious festival on Sunday on the restrictions imposed by the Sultan, who doubled as the Imam. The powerful anti-COVID-19 drive across the nation kept the Fidels on high spiritual alert as they prayed for the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic to leave the Earth's surface. 12-year-old Nanu wishing a very happy Eid al-Fitr to her family. Imam Sangu Mama led prayers including worshipping in the courtyard of the Charis.
I'm in my compound with all my family. In respect to the order that we received from the government, and which has been emphasized yesterday by the Sultan in his announcement, in his message to his people yesterday. He asks us to pray at home in family.
They had their iftar after praying under absolute respect of barrier measures.
On to one of our top stories, the fight against the coronavirus has been taken to penitentiary units by the Association of Legal Practitioners in Thames Valley Division of the South Region. Inmates and personnel of the Ambam prison received anti-COVID-19 packages from the delegation led by Senator Pierre-François Xavier Meignet. They were called upon to brave the challenges that come with keeping hygiene recommendations and physical distancing in the units. Pontianus Lawong tells us more from the South.
After the May 19 call by President Paul Biya for the entire Cameroon to join forces against the coronavirus pandemic, the Association of Legal Practitioners from the Thames Valley Division has hearkened to the call. Led by Senator Pierre-François Xavier Meignet, they have donated anti-COVID-19 materials, namely hand wash cans and buckets, face masks, hydroalcoholic solutions and laundry soap, plus a significant quantity of food items to the Ambam prison in the Thames Valley Division.
This is why we came here. The President spoke maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and we understood that you have to do something for that.
The close to 150 inmates and 40 personnel of the prison have expressed gratitude to the donors, pledging to use the materials responsibly so as to save their lives and those of the entire community. We are happy to know that the elite think about the Ambam prison. This comes to reinforce measures taken by the Ministry of Justice to fight against COVID-19. Speaking on behalf of the Association of Legal Practitioners from the Thames Valley, the Secretary General Magistrate Florent-Yves Ntiamkoto encouraged the inmates to be hopeful and to stay safe, adding that the prison is a facility aimed at enabling them correct their past errors and becoming better citizens in future. The legal practitioners have also donated anti-COVID-19 materials to the Ambam law courts as part of measures to oust the coronavirus pandemic from the judiciary system.
In a related development, some 20,000 additional protective face masks from the head of state have been handed over to vulnerable groups of the Adamawa region to help curb the spread of the coronavirus. The symbolic handing over of the package was done by Governor Kildadi Tagike Bukar, who exhorted the beneficiaries to protect themselves and others by strictly abiding by the prescribed rules. Noya Ben Modike has the details.
For every serious ailment, the therapy has to be proportionate to the problem. This is why the head of state has made an additional offer of face masks to some target populations of the 5 divisions of the region. The beneficiaries include traders of main markets, the syndicate of commercial motor taxi riders, that for taxi drivers, travel agencies, and religious bodies. Their representatives are expected to pass on the message that coronavirus is a real public health issue.
We want that those masks should be put on by the population. It's very important, because if this mask was not important, the head of state would have not given it to the population. And to implement other measures, it's the only way for us.
Ahead of the resumption of classes for some learners on June the 1st, the Adamawa delegate for secondary education got a fair share of the stock to help eventually secure students and their teachers.
On another philanthropic move, close to 200 internally displaced persons from Koshin Wum in the Northwest region seeking refuge in Ebebda in the Center region have been handed over food items and COVID-19 preventive kits. During the donation given by the traditional ruler, the beneficiaries expressed gratitude and the host community was lauded for promoting the spirit of living together, as we hear this report by Lekiate Gertrude Asongazi.
The close to 200 IDPs have been living in Ebebda for a couple of years now after running from their native home village in the Northwest region. In a bid to assist them, the paramount ruler of Koshim, His Royal Majesty Yor Wilson, came to Njoniat with some food items and sanitary kits, a gesture that was greatly saluted by the beneficiaries.
Send my phone for the second time. I'm very happy, because I am feeling that he is our father. If he was not our father, he would have not come here for the second time to check and bring us something that we can even manage. So everything that our fund has given, I as the leader, I'm going to make sure that everybody who is living anywhere will have small part of it.
Another highlight of the brief ceremony was the crowning of the traditional ruler of Njuniat, His Majesty Besalam Bawi Faustin, as notable of the Koshin people by their phone.
I struggled to mobilize some small food under the assistance of His Excellency, the Minister of Lands, Minister Harry Eyebe Ayesi, who has assisted me. He's a father. I want to thank some of my elite, Fru Jonathan and Mr. Anzo Celestine, who has assisted me.
Taken to the rostrum, the elite of Njuniat said the hard-working population of Koshin seeking refuge in Ebebda in the Leke division of the Center region all feel at home and promised them of total security and peace.
Over in the East region, the Glory of Christ Chapel has donated a house and food items to an artist of Baka origin who's been living in desperation. The group led by Mrs. Crescence Babuke extended a hand of fellowship to Justine Libala of the Patinge group, which rose to fame in the 90s. Tala LT has the details.
This is the song that made Mama Justine Libala popular in the late 90s on the Cameroonian music scene. After her days of success, which were short-lived, the former artist of the Patinge music group retired to her native Baka village of Mayos in the Dimako subdivision, where she lived in abject poverty. During these years of difficulty, she kept on crying to people of goodwill to come to her rescue. This cry was, however, heard by the leader of the Chapelle de la Gloire du Christ, who decided to make an effort to change her condition.
This mother has cried for help, so it is the answer of that cry. We thank God because He permits it to be realized.
This church, with headquarters in Yaoundé, constructed and equipped a 5-bedroom apartment, a kitchen, a latrine, and a well. Besides this, they also handed a significant amount of foodstuff and kitchen utensils to the tune of over 20 million CFA francs.
I thank the donors who have pitied my condition and decided to help me. I thought my life as an artist was going to end in misery, but thank God for people like this with good hearts. I pray that God grants them many more blessings.
The lady, who is in her 70s, has quit the musical scene and lives in her native Mayos, where she takes care of her grandchildren. These gifts, she adds, will permit her enjoy the rest of her days on earth with a smile on her face.
Now on to road security. The Monitor, Control and Punish National Gendarmerie Third Generation Road Safety Task Force has launched stiff checks on road users to bar the way to the coronavirus. The team was along the Yaoundé-Abongbang-Beto National Road number 10 this weekend. Kilian Ndadifon watched the crackdown on delinquent commuters and now reports.
Barrier measures against COVID-19 pandemic have drastically reduced traffic on the Yaoundé-Beto National Road number 10, but the National Gendarmerie Road Safety Task Force has not relented its Monitor, Control, Punish Third Generation campaign to render life difficult for delinquent road users. 2 fixed control posts Saturday, May 23, one at the Akonolinga Road Junction in the Center region, and the next in Dimako, about 30 kilometers to Betua. At the Akonolinga Road Junction control post, like at the Dimako checkpoint, halt vehicles from both ends of the road, vehicle documents, fire extinguishers, first aid box, mental state of the driver and the state of the vehicle, among other exigencies, are scrutinized. These are mandatory control rules of the Road Safety Task Force, and any defaulter, according to the gravity of their offense, is either sensitized or pays the corresponding penalty. Like the misuse of the road, COVID-19 pandemic is a new killer linked to behavioral negligence, and the National Gendarmerie is out to stop anyone whose carelessness will cause suffering, death and sorrow to innocent compatriots and their families. Here, they ensure that the authorized number of passengers in a vehicle, physical distancing, wearing of face mask, no handshaking, among other government anti-COVID-19 measures, are strictly respected.
And we end this newscast with his official telegram from the President of Eritrea, His Excellency Isaias Afwerki, to the President of Cameroon, His Excellency Paul Biya. On the occasion of the celebration of Cameroon's 48th National Day, do, Mr. President, accept my heartfelt considerations and those of the people of Eritrea as we enjoy fruitful bilateral cooperation. That ends this edition of the 7:30 News. More news comes up at 8:30 p.m. with Karine Olivia Beat. I'll be back next weekend, God willing. Meantime, have a beautiful week ahead and stay protected. Good night.
CRTV News, ici, toute l'info.